It's Whitney Day. Let's cap the card at Saratoga. Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to another episode of Capping the Card, where I go through all 13 races on Whitney Stakes Day card at Saratoga. Going to give you my top pick, my top value play for all 13 races. But before we get into those, want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe on NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the network, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. So press that like and subscribe button today. All right. Well, if this is your first time joining Capping the Card, welcome. And the premise is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through all 13 races on Saturday's Saratoga card. I'm going to give you my top pick. That should be self-explanatory. I'm also going to give you my value play. Value play is, in some instances, a horse that I really think is a major win threat that you should think about including in your horizontal wagers. Other times, it's a horse that I think is just going to outrun their odds. Horse that might be 12, 15 to 1. And I think, hey, that horse can round out an exacta, I think, pretty nicely. So I'll try to call out those distinctions when they are available. But listen, it's a great card. 13 races, some phenomenal maiden races. The stakes races are outstanding. The fields are tremendous. I think there's opportunity for value in every single sequence and I think there's value in every single race. So it is a tremendous card top to bottom. Cannot recommend it enough. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we connected to a few winners and a lot of good prices on this episode. The other thing to obviously talk about is the weather. Everybody loves talking about weather in Saratoga. Listen, we had rain on Thursday at Saratoga. If anybody follows racing knows we were off turf. Friday, weather is going to be beautiful. Saturday, weather is going to be beautiful. I would expect the main track to be fast. At worst, I would expect the turf course to be labeled as good come Saturday, all right, with an outside shot of it potentially being labeled as warm because we are getting nothing but sun the next few days. So I'm thinking it's going to be really great conditions for racing. Not too worried about the conditions in that regard impacting choices in handicapping. But hey, listen, the only way to get through all 13 races, start at the beginning. So let's start with race number 1, which is one of those really great maiden special weight races. And this one is going 6.5 furlongs on the main track for 2-year-olds, $100,000 maiden special weight race. This is a tough race right off the bat. You could look at the number 2 horse, Tagermine. That horse at 7-2 makes a lot of sense. $1.4 million purchase for Steve Asmussen, who's been riding, at very hot barn right now. That one lost in debut to Curtain Call. Don't love the inside rail draw for Tagermine, so wanted to try to beat this one. Blinging it back from Mark Cassidy. Another is your morning line favorite at 2 to 1. Very nice horse. Ran a big number in the Tremont. Didn't run as big of a number in the Sanford, though was just getting blown out by obliteration that day. Ran a 68. It's interesting. I don't know what number this horse is. This horse has ran a 43, an 85, and a 68. Take your pick of which one you think is the real blinging it back. The horse is dangerous for sure, but I'm going to try to use 2 horses for the price of 1 here. And that's because there's a couple to entry with the 1 and the 1A. And I think they both are incredibly live in this race. But I leaned a little bit more towards the 1, Abarrio, at 3 to 1, 4 trainer Brad Cox, Manny Franco up. This one is a son of Yopon. Yopons were very hot at all of the sales. First crop sire that's had a lot of success right out of the gate. This was an OBS March 2025 purchase for $875,000. To be clear, Yopon stands for $25,000. So this is one that was purchased very seriously. I had the opportunity to watch this one's OBS work. Big stride. That is very apparent when you watch this one run. I think ultimately probably wants to go a little further, but I think 6.5 is a good starting point. Horse looks like a very impressive runner and a very impressive mover. Manny Franco up for Brad Cox. Nice workouts down at Churchill Downs. Nice works up here at Saratoga. I like Manny up for Brad in the spot. So Abrigado, my top choice. But you also get the 1A, Ted Nafi. Both these horses are owned by Spendthrift. This one is a $650,000 son of Into Mischief. Now, the pedigree page isn't huge on this one, but clearly there's a lot in the physicals to be desired for this one to be a $650,000 purchase as a yearling at the Keeneland September 2024 sale. So clearly a lot to like there. Todd Pletcher is the trainer for this one with Johnny Velasquez aboard. You know how I feel about those two in these types of spots. I love John Velasquez on 2-year-old horses. And Todd has really been buoyed by his 2-year-olds. It seems like he has a very strong crop of 2-year-olds this year. He's winning at a 30% clip during the Saratoga Meet. This one also has a nice series of works at 47-3, gate work 3 back on July 5th. I think is particularly noteworthy. So I really like the 1 here and the 1A that you get for adding the 2 together. Now, in terms of a value play, the number 7 Legal Gambit, 10-1 for trainer Chad Brown. I rad Ortiz Jr. up. Rad's riding so well. I mean, honestly, everything he's on right now, it's just so live. But this one I just like because it's a Tiz the Law. And Tiz the Law has had a lot of success, particularly with first out success. So when you look at those first time out numbers, when you look at those dirt sprint numbers, very good first out sire. So I like this one, Legal Gambit, quite a bit. I like that Irad stays aboard. This one's got a couple of nice gate works as well, and is coming up from Monmouth. But I think at 10-1, you get a little bit of a price there in a race that's pretty wide open. Again, I think that one's more of an underneath play. If I'm playing the early pick 5, it's hard to get around the top 3 choices. I'd maybe try to fade one of those at the very least. And I know my colleague Kaylee Shapiro is a little bit interested in the 4 at a big price, Ambassador Blue at 15-1 for Danny Gargan. So that's another one maybe to think about keeping in mind, but really loaded first race to kick things off. But let's go to race number 2, which is another $100,000 maiden special weight race for 2-year-olds going 1 mile and 1/16 on the turf. This one I feel is ripe for a price. I think this one you could find a big price in this field because you could look at a horse like Signatory Man for Brendan Walsh, the number 2 at 9-2. This one's had some trouble the last couple of times out. Maybe didn't like the obviously off-track conditions last time. Needed a little bit more time. Needed to stretch out. I think there's a lot to like there with this horse. And I like Brendan a lot too. So 9-2 Signatory Man makes a lot of sense. A horse I looked at for a long time as my potential value play. Obviously, you have your morning line favorite, Capital Partner for Chad Brown with Flavia Pratt up. A very formidable horse that could, be a real monster potentially. You never know. But it is going to be interesting to see Half to Euphoric, who was a first out winner over in Europe, but never won again. So that's something, again, just to maybe keep in mind. Ultimately, I landed on a horse that's a bit of a price. And that's the number 6 British Invasion for Miguel Clement. Now, Miguel has not had a great amount of first out success yet in his limited time since taking over for his father's barn. He has had a lot of success in general, though, winning 23% of his entries during the Saratoga Meet. Manny Franco is up. This is actually the other Clement horse. His main horse is prodigious at 4-1, the Mendelssohn runner, who is Joel Rosario up in the mount. But I really like British Invasion. Some of the works have been nice. More importantly, this one is the half, or I should say the full sibling, to Max Vega, who's a Group 3 winner over in Europe. And I just like the pedigree here quite a bit. So if you dig in to some of that European form, it's really nice in terms of that pedigree. And obviously sired by Luke de Vega, always a spectacular first out influence here in the United States. So like this one a lot, particularly going long. So British Invasion for me is a top choice. Now, in terms of the value, I love the number 1 Sunrise. This is a horse that is the full sibling to Spenderella. Now, if you know anything about racing, you know I was a big fan of Spenderella. This is a horse that was a Group 1 winner of the Del Mar Oaks, went over to Europe, nearly won the Coronation Cup over in Spiral. I shouldn't say nearly, but finished second to Inspiral in that Coronation Cup, won the Appalachian, won the Here Comes the Bride, started off her career a perfect 3 for 3, and was just such a good filly. And this is the full sibling. So I at 10-1 inside rail, Jose Ortiz, who's also been having a great meet up for Todd Pletcher. I'm going to take a shot with this one. And maybe you look at the sales price, only $150,000. Caraconti only stands for $15,000, but still you'd expect because of the pedigree, this one should have probably maybe sold for more. Maybe it didn't vet great. You never know. Maybe there were some physicals there for this one. But nevertheless, this one just the pedigree jumps off the page, and you just can't help it. You can't help ignore it. And especially when you see the fact that the mare has produced 4 first out winners from 7 race foals. So again, there's a lot to like there with Sunrise at 10-1. That's going to be my value play in the second race. Well, let's go to the first of 5 stakes races on the card, and that is the Saratoga Special Grade 2 going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And for this one, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. The number 6, Obliteration, 7-5. I like this one over Ewing quite a bit. 2 things I didn't like about Ewing. Well, 3 actually. 4 if you count the fact I'm not a Knicks fan. But we'll leave that one to be for right now. First, the inside rail. I don't like the inside rail in these types of races for 2-year-olds. I just don't. I know he broke from the second, the 2-hole last time out, but I don't like the rail. If you're just off a slightest step slow, everything goes to crap, especially if you are predicated upon speed, which this horse is. Second, this horse was completely cranked up for debut. Completely cranked up for debut. You look at what this horse was doing in terms of workouts: 46-3 gate work, 47-3, 37 bullet gate work. This horse was cranked for debut, and this horse ran off the screen, won by 12 lengths. But this is the third reason why I'm not a big fan of this horse. Didn't work for almost 3 weeks after that debut effort. It's a little bit of a red flag that maybe there was some soreness. Maybe this one, didn't, not anything went wrong with the horse, but maybe just a little sore. Maybe took a lot out of him. And now we're building back to a second start. Listen, horse is supremely talented. No 2 ways about it. But I'm going to side against Ewing, and I'm going to go with Obliteration, who in my eyes was one of the most impressive horses I've seen at Saratoga this meet. On the far outside, I like the outside post in this particular instance. The horse showed in debut it could rate down at Churchill Downs. Came back and blew the barn doors off of everyone last time out. But in that debut race, beat Curtain Call, who was a next out maiden winner, and beat Clocker Special, who was a next out maiden winner. And Curtain Call absolutely dominated Tagermeet, who is running in that first race that I mentioned. But Obliteration at 7-5 for me. Love this horse. Love the works that this one has had for Steve Asmussen since coming out of that July 5th race. Notably, that one came back on the training track 9 days later. Juxtapose that with what Ewing did. So this one came out of that Stanford Stakes victory and was good to go. And I just think is, like I said, really a pretty special horse. It's got a lot more in the tank. Flavian Pratt up on the mount for Asmussen. Like the 5 furlong work this one got in. And then a nice, easy 3 furlong work. So that's it. That is the method you want to see from Steve Asmussen. Bullet, maintenance work. That's the pattern you always want to see with him coming into a big race. Obliteration for me is a top choice. Now, my value play, Comport, number 2, for Eddie Keneally. This one finished second in the Bashford Manor to Romeo. And won in debut, though, very impressively at Churchill Downs. Has been training down at Churchill, training well down at Churchill too. 59-3 bullet last time out, going 5 furlongs. Eddie doesn't enter a lot of horses up here in Saratoga, so when he does, he's pretty careful about it. Louis Saez remains aboard, has ridden this horse each of the last 2 times out. I think this horse has a real chance, and I think at 8-1 presents some really interesting value. Maybe you look at a horse like Ewing or Obliteration, you go, hey, they're my top choice, and then I think throw in a little bit of a horse like Comport as a value play. Listen, the one thing I also will say about this race, I wouldn't be doing it justice if I didn't address the elephant in the room, which is the loss of Dazzling Doro for trainer Tom Amos. Of course, we're very saddened by the loss of Dazzle Doro, who unfortunately had to be humanely euthanized after suffering a significant injury on the training track. And that just happened earlier this week. So that horse, obviously, very sorry to hear that horse's loss, thinking of the connections, but would not be right to talk about this race without at least mentioning why that horse is not running, in case people watching might not be familiar with it, might be wondering why I don't mention a horse that actually was very full of promise. So very sad story, but wanted to address the elephant in the room and at least mention that. And of course, give my thoughts to the connections and everyone associated with the horse. But let's move on to race number 4. And that is a $75,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. Yes, my good friends, we're back to turf sprints. And you know how I feel about turf sprints. I don't love them, but here we are. And so the number 10, final verdict. That's my final answer. Listen, I could have easily looked at the 1, Twisted Filigree. Makes a lot of sense for George Weaver, a horse that I would absolutely be including on my wagers, my early tickets. the horse came off the bench and faced open company and won at this level and condition, basically, and went gate to wire. The inside rail scares me a little bit. The fact that Pratt's off and Manny Franco's up is also maybe a little concerning. Pratt's riding Run Curtis Run, another very live runner for Mike Maker. I love Run Curtis Run. The problem is Love Curtis Run doesn't love me. And so Love Curtis Run chooses not to run when I pick him. So maybe you should bet on Run Curtis Run now because I ultimately went further outside. Final Verdict is an interesting horse for Ed Barker. Jose Ortiz up on the mount, taking over for Dylan Davis. Horses run really well in 3 races this year, all at this level, and has run pretty much the same numbers each time, 92, 88, 89. Nearly got the job done twice, just came up short, has a good tracking style. I like the outside post with that running style. Jose can play the break. I think can kind of maybe finish a little bit stronger. I just think this horse at 9-2 presents a little bit better value up top than some of my other options. And so Final Verdict for me is a horse that, again, seems to have come back in 2025 as a 5-year-old in much better form overall and much more consistent form overall. Running up here in New York, does have a win over the turf at Saratoga, does have a win at the distance, can and has gone through bouts where this horse maybe is not the most consistent, but a lot of that was, again, on the dirt. Once they switched this horse to the turf, this horse has run really, really well. 9 career starts, 7 times hitting the board with 2 victories. So this horse can win, and I just think this one presents some interesting value at 9-2 as an up top selection. Now, in terms of the value play, horse that's a real X factor is Bergen. I remember when this horse debuted for Brad Cox, and a lot of people thought a lot of this horse. This horse won the Jimmy Winkfield back in 2024. I remember being there that day when the horse beat Iridescent, and this is a nice sprinter. And went to the Gotham, and clearly going long wasn't the answer. Went back to another stakes race at Oaklawn, went to the Bachelor, and finished 5th that day to Valentine Candy. Then went to Brittany Russell's barn and kind of bounced around there. And now is with Joe Sharp. Joe Sharp's having himself a real good meet, winning 35% of his entries. Louis Saez up on the mount. This horse is second back from a little bit of a layoff, having last ran and claiming 50 and finished 3rd that day. But now we're in a new barn. Sometimes that's all you need. And I think that this one, you could tell, has come to the new barn and gotten a couple of very fast works. One over the turf, actually, and one over the dirt. And so 47 flat work over, 4 furlong work over the synthetic was the first one for Sharp's barn. And then another minute flat, 5 furlong work over a firm turf course down at Fair Hill. So I think Sharp has this one. I think he's got the idea right. We're going to switch surfaces with this one, do something a little bit different, inject this horse with maybe a little bit more early speed. It's a horse that generally has come from well off the pace. I'm expecting Bergen to maybe run a surprising race. At 12-1, I would not put anything past this horse. I think this one's sitting on a live effort. Let's go to race number 5 on the card, which is a maiden special weight race for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares going 7 furlongs on the dirt. And for this one, this is one of those races. You could make an argument for the number 1, Met Farda, for Todd Pletcher. This is a $2.3 million purchase as a yearling back in 2023. And, is the half sibling to Window Shopping, who's a nice horse, grade 2 winner at the Summer Oaks. And this one, again, has some good pedigree here for sure. 2.3 million. But you look at the running lines and I don't know, or the workout lines, I should say, and I just don't know what's been going on with this horse. You could say, well, Todd's had this horse for a long time. There was a long break from, if I'm not mistaken, August 2024 until February 2025, so a period of about 6 months. But basically, this horse has been working out with Todd since mid-February. Just working out. February 13th, February 21st, March 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30th, April 9th, 16th, 23rd, May 15th, 29th, June 6th, June 13th, 20th, 27th, 7th, 18th, 26th. This horse has been working out a lot. And maybe it just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Maybe the horse isn't coming along the way Todd would have wanted. I don't know. It's a big price tag for a horse that I'm not convinced is necessarily that good. Maybe that one surprises me at 6-1. Definitely took a long look at it for sure. Looked at a few other horses, but ultimately, the two horses I couldn't get away from were my top choice in my value play. Lost and Found as my top choice and Endorse. I just couldn't get away from these two. Lost and Found coming out of Churchill Downs. Everybody knows that angle now. Everything coming out of Churchill has been incredibly live during this meet at Saratoga. This one is second back from a 6-month layoff, having debuted at Fairgrounds, is going to get on a fast track for the first time in its career. Keeps Flavian Pratt up for trainer Will Walden, who's been on absolute fire. And I just think this one has a lot of good early speed and might break up top and never look back. 3-1 on the morning line seems almost generous, actually. That said, the number 9 Endorse is a really interesting horse. I liked this horse quite a bit last time out. The problem is the horse stumbled really bad out of the gate and lost Irad literally right out of the starting gate, going a mile and an eighth. Now they're cutting it back to 7 furlongs. This one lost to Ragtime at 7 furlongs. We're going to talk about Ragtime a little bit later. She's a real special runner. And Endorse, though, 5-1 for Todd Pletcher with Irad up. Again, that one feels pretty dangerous in this spot for Rapoli Stables. 5-1 is not the sort of value that I normally like to find, but those were just the two horses I really couldn't get around in this race. And so maybe you want to use Endorse to try to beat Lost and Found. Fair enough. Maybe you think Lost and Found is a single. Fair enough. I looked at Phil Bauer's horse, Delightful Claire, 6-1. That's another very nice horse. Would not shock me if that horse won. Was beaten by a next out winner, in fact, Princess Proud. So, again, Phil Bauer very live in these sorts of spots. So, it's a tough race. Ivory and Ebony for Dale Romans. Was in Dallas Stewart's barn, now is in Roman's barn. That one actually beat Delightful Claire in that race last time out. Is going to be her third bite at the apple, or fourth bite at the apple, I should say, after 3 career starts. And the other horse that I want to mention, and it sounds like I'm mentioning the whole field, but it's a really competitive race. Number 2, My Sharona for Ray Handel. That one might need one back. That's a good horse, though. That's a horse that finished second in the Busanda to Running Away. Getting Lasix for the first time, 3 career starts, 3 career seconds. Lost to a horse like Beauty Reigns and Ramify, Running Away. That horse has done very little wrong. And I just don't know if the horse is all the way cranked up for the debut, but that's a nice horse, My Sharona. So, listen, Endorse and Lost and Found, that's the way I'm going to be going in race number 5. Well, let's go to race number 6, $100,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-old fillies, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And sometimes you just look at sales prices. And that shouldn't be your only handicapping method. You should then back that up by looking at things. But this is a prime example in terms of the number 4, Ornelia, that sired by Gervin, who stands for $25,000. This was a $1.1 million purchase at the recent East Coast May sales in 2025 for trainer Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt up. When you see a Gervin sell for $1.1 million, that might tell you that this horse, maybe physically, is pretty impressive. Is the sibling to Adios Dixie, who is a 2-time winner. Otherwise, kind of indistinguished pedigree. And so the pedigree doesn't necessarily jump off the page. But when you see this horse physically, the horse looks like a specimen. Chad is very good at first time out. I don't think you have to get too sharp in this field to go after this one. I do think Al Stahl's horse, Solemn Vow, is a really interesting one. The 1A. The 1 for Todd Pletcher is also a nice runner for Spendthrift. The side by Street Sense. That one's pretty serious as well. That's your morning line favorite. But I'm going to go to the number 4, Ornelia, at 7-2. I'm going to follow the price tag of that $1.1 million that Chad Brown is training. And so that one is going to be my top selection. Now, in terms of value play, really like Danny Gargan's filly in this race. Immaculate Moon at 10-1 on the morning line. This one's sired by McKenzie. McKenzie's are good out of the gate, that's for sure. Nice 2-year-old sire. We've seen some of his 3-year-olds have success. This one is a Maryland bred. Obviously, I should say, a horse like Chancellor McPatrick just came back and won the Curlin Stakes the other day for McKenzie. But what really is impressive to me about this one for Danny is just the string of bullet works this one's been turning out. And, 36 flat gate work, minute flat, 5 furlong work, 47 flat, 4 furlong work. Danny is not a trainer who gets a horse cranked for debut. Danny lets them do it easily. He lets them do it naturally. And so when you see one of his horses turning in nothing but bullet works, that tells you this horse is pretty freaking live. And this is not a trainer that's getting them unnecessarily cranked up. He's not trying with this horse, okay? I think that's something that's really important to point out. He's not trying to get this one cranked up for debut. This is just this horse doing this work that well. And so I think Immaculate Moon at 10-1, real live runner in this race. I know Germantown's also a little bit interesting at the number 9, 12-1 for trainer Todd Pletcher. Liam's map out of a Malibu Moon mare. Might actually want the turf, but might just be very precocious as well. So really good race, though, in race number 6, though, for those fillies and 2-year-old races. Well, let's go to race number 7, $75,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going 7 furlongs on the dirt. Another, again, it sounded like a broken record. Doozy of a race. Doozy of a race. You could go a few different directions here, and gosh knows I almost did. And you could look at the number 11, Credit Worthy. Listen, this could be a very nice horse that blows them out for fun. 3-1 for Chad Brown, Flavian up. Here's the thing. I just always have a hard time taking off-turf figures seriously. This one ran some real nice races on the turf, then went to the dirt over a sloppy sealed track in a race taken off the turf, and a horse ran a hole in the wind and got a 91 Beyer speed figure. Now we're running on the dirt intentionally, going 7 furlongs. Well, first, we're going a little bit longer. We're going an extra furlong. No guarantee. Second, now we're over a fast track. We're not over a wet track anymore. Third, we're running against other dirt horses. I think that's who are specifically pointed towards this type of a race. I think all those things are a little bit concerning for me with a horse like Credit Worthy, who I think could run a huge race, to be clear. But I just am willing to try to beat that horse a little bit due to that running line and dynamic. People are going to see a horse like the number 7 Speakeasy in this race as well. This is a former Pletcher horse that was really well thought of and was actually at one point pointed towards, I believe, the Fountain of Youth, and had to scratch the week of or the day of that race. Ultimately ended up running in the H. Allen Jerkins, and just he never really kind of panned out after that. And so now with Gustavo Delgado, Christopher Elliott up on the mount, at 10-1, I need to see this horse run once for the new barn. Ultimately, I landed on Dilger as my top choice at 6-1 for Safi Joseph Jr. with Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. Irad and Safi, they do well together, 28% over the last year, and 29% actually just specifically up here at Saratoga with the $2.66 ROI, which is a really high ROI for anything Irad is riding. So this one, interesting horse. Because this one, finishes underneath a lot. But I could also say you could point to some things and go, well, you can cross lines through some of these. Some of these races sent the horse to the bench. Maybe the horse was a little overmatched at times, was going against stakes company. You isolate this horse at this level, there's a lot to like here. And I think this horse has every possibility of running back to that kind of high 80, low 90 Beyer speed figure. Safi's had this horse working up here for a while. I like the 47-1 bullet work back on July 15. I like the kind of nice, strong, but easy works the last couple of times out. I think Dilger makes a ton of sense in this race, and I just think this is a horse that can sit just off the pace. Irad is so good with that tracking trip. I just love the way this horse is going to ultimately break, and I think is going to be able to sit behind some of the early speed in this race. So for me, Dilger at 6-1, really interesting choice. Now, a horse that I think you could get some value in is the number 3 Echo again for Norm Cassie with Johnny V up. This one, has finished third the last 2 times out, basically at this level. And That's kind of what I think this horse is maybe a little bit more of an underneath horse. Again, 18 career starts, 3 victories, but 18, if you look at it the other way, 18 starts, 10 times hitting the board. Just 7 of those 10 times were in the second and the third place. So again, a horse that I feel like is consistently going to run up into something and is going to finish with intent and be strong, but might not quite get the job done. But Echo, again, at 10-1, I think is a horse that you can absolutely use to round out those exotics and trifectas and exactas. Let's go to the first of the string of 4 straight Grade 1 races. Let's go to the Fourstardave. And this was easily the toughest of the 4 stakes races for me. And you might say, Matthew, should be the easiest because you should just single Johannes and move on. And that is what I think that's the general consensus, is that Johannes, who is coming in from California for trainer Tim Yakteen, especially now that Carl Spackler is overseas, is probably your best turf miler. And he might very well be. But this will also be his first race in 2025. He has not raced since December 26th, where he won the San Gabriel over Hermano Ramon. He finished second by less than a length of more than looks. He rattled off a bunch of really impressive victories in the Shoemaker Mile, the Ed Reed, the City of Hope. Great horse. This horse, since switching to the turf, has shipped out of California at least at a grand total of 1 time. And that was the 1 time since he switched to the turf that he did not finish in the top 2. He finished 5th by 2 lengths that day. Now, he admittedly didn't get off to a very good start, and he had a tough trip in the American turf back at Churchill Downs in May of 2023. But the reality is that when this horse shipped, it didn't fire. Listen, you don't ship across the country if you're not ready to run. Tim Yakteen's got this horse ready to run. Umberto Rispoli's ridden this horse since it went onto the turf. So I don't doubt the team. I don't doubt the connections. But it's a different running surface than what he's used to out on the West Coast. It's a little bit deeper. Yes, he's run over a good turf course before, so he can deal with the moisture. I'm not worried about that. But again, 5-2, I think he's going to be a much shorter price than that. I'm a little worried. I think a horse like Deterministic is very interesting at 9-2. I really took a long look at this horse. I think I would not be shocked if this horse wins. He's going to sit behind My Boy Prince, and I think he's going to get a very nice trip for Miguel Clement and Kendrick Carmouche. The last couple of times out were gate to wire, but he's shown the ability to win coming from off the pace as he did in the Hill Prince. So Deterministic, incredibly versatile horse. I actually like the cut back to a mile for him a little bit. So took a long look at him. Absolutely. The horse I landed on, though, was my top selection is the number 6 Intellect at 5-1 for trainer Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt up on the mount. This one probably should have won the Kelso last time out, just maybe moved a little too early, flattened out a little too much late, just maybe not the most perfectly timed ride. Had a little bit of trouble in the first time out in North America, finished 3rd, but made up a lot of ground. Of course, always is making up ground and should be able to set a pretty good trip, I think, on Saturday, sit behind some of the early speed, and then be able to make one big run with Flavian up. It just feels like Chad has this one going in the right direction from a buyer speed figure standpoint, 90, 93, 96. Get another increase to a 99. I think that's probably more than enough to win this race. So I think Intellect, pretty dangerous horse in this spot is my top selection. The other horse that I'll be honest is, I mean, again, you could, if you're going to try to beat Johannes, you want to do it with a few different horses. I think the number 4, Think Big, at 6-1. I didn't want to use that one as a value play because it feels like too wide open of a race to use 6-1 as a value play. That horse is good. That horse beat Intellect and win for the money last time out. I love the stretch out from 5.5 to a mile for this one for Michael Stidham, Godolphin, sired by Twirling Candy out of a Street Sense mare. Again, this one on the turf, done very little wrong. 5 for 6 winning. Only losses at the Grade 1 Jaipur going 5.5. And I think at a mile, this one's deadly because the other thing is they didn't change its running style. That's what I loved about it. That's what I loved what Jose Ortiz did last time, is that he didn't change his running style. He kept the horse off the pace, which is how the horse always ran, even though we're stretching out, and he probably could have gone straight to the lead with his natural speed, but he didn't change the horse's running style. I think that's good. Now, Jose's off. Louis Size is up. Part of the reason Jose is off is because the connections did not initially think they were going to go to this race. And so Jose Ortiz had committed to riding My Boy Prince before Think Big was pointed towards this race. So there was a little bit of maybe not miscommunication, but kind of just a little bit of confusion there. But ultimately, Think Big lands in this spot. Louis Sai is up, very capable rider, pretty dangerous here. Value play, you probably are not going to be surprised. Shug McGahee on the turf going long is always going to be something I'm interested in. This is a horse second back from a long layoff in terms of Cugino, the number one at 10-1 on the morning line. And the second back ran a career best buyer speed figure off the bench, 93. Granted, came with the assistance of Lasix, but this horse has won plenty without Lasix. And I think a mile is probably the best distance for this one. He's going to save a ton of ground. Versatile running style, can get up on the lead, can track and close. I like that sort of flexibility that Irad has. I would also point to the July 20th Bullet work over the Saratoga training turf course, 46-4, first of 51. You tell me the last time you saw a Shug McGahee turf route horse throwing around bullets like that. You don't see it very often. That tells me this horse is feeling good and ready to run. So Cugino at 10-1, I think, is a very live play in this Fourstardave, which is just a tremendous race. Well, let's go to the Saratoga Derby Invitational, another grade one for a 3-year-old. And we're going a mile and 3/16 on the Mellon turf course. And there are times I don't overthink things, and this is one of those times. I'm going to Hot as Hell, who is your morning line favorite for Jessica Harrington with Shane Foley aboard. Why? This horse is a Group 1 winner in Europe. This horse has won over soft ground. This horse has won over good ground. This horse has won going 7 furlongs and a mile. This horse then, as a 3-year-old, stepped up and ran in the Irish 2000 Guineas against Field of Gold. Finished 3rd that day out of 9. Then went to the Coral Eclipse and finished 5th that day, and granted in a field of 6, but lost to Delacroix and a Budsman. Very good horses, ruling court as well. That was also going a mile and a quarter, and I don't think that's what this horse wants to do over there. Because over there, a mile and a quarter, there's undulations and all that sort of thing. Mile and 3/16 in the United States, 2 turns, flat surface. I don't think it's any problem. The other thing is they're bringing the jockey over. When you're bringing over Shane Foley, who's got only one mount for the day, you're not doing it just for the airline miles. You're doing it because you want to get a paycheck. And this is a horse that's a 4-time winner over in Europe, and I just think stands over the field. So I'm going to go with Hot as Hell at 7-5. And that pains me because I love a horse like Test Score. I love Test Score at 7-2. Everybody, that was my pick in the Belmont Derby. Test Score, I love that horse. So big fan of some of these other American horses in the race. And I'm not the biggest fan of the other 2 Europeans, but I really like Hot as Hell in the spot. Belmont's horse, Capitol Hill, maybe it's a little bit of underneath play. The biggest threat, I think, to Hot as Hell is my value play. And that's the number 3 Final Gambit for Brad Cox with Flavian Pratt up on the mount. You'll remember this one finished 4th in the Kentucky Derby, came back, ran 4th in a 4-horse field in the Matt Win, but it was really more of a pace-dependent horse. Was in the Belmont Derby, getting back on grass for the first time since debut. Ran an 87 buyer, made up a ton of ground late when it was flying late. Won the Gallop Out for people who love seeing who wins the Gallop Out. But Cox is putting blinkers on. And I think that's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to give the horse maybe a little bit more early speed, which is what the horse needs. And then 2, it's going to help this horse maybe focus that much more coming down the stretch. So I like Final Gambit with the blinkers on at 6-1. I think that one is a real legitimate threat to Hot as Hell. If any of the Americans are going to beat that horse, I think it's going to be Final Gambit. And listen, it's a good problem to have. It's a good field. World Beater's a nice horse. New Century's a nice horse. Test Score's a nice horse. Heck, Tistastic's a nice horse. But for me, I think Capitol Hill is the one who could potentially challenge Hot as Hell for supremacy in this race. Well, let's go to the test. This is another tough race. 7 furlongs on the main track for 3-year-old fillies. Boy, you could look at a horse like Kilwin for Rusty Arnold. Horse has been on the turf. All of a sudden, they put the horse on the dirt in the Leslie's Lady. The horse runs a 96 buyer speed figure going this distance at Churchill. And we know how good everything has been coming out of Churchill. Oh, that wouldn't shock me at all if Kilwin won this race. You got Bob Baffert shipping in a horse, Cash Call, 5-1. This horse won the Summer Oaks last time out, and I think is actually better sprinting, and Bob's cutting the horse back. Could run a huge race. And it's not like Bob's got anybody else out here. He's shipping in for one horse. Then you got your morning line favorite, Echo Sound. Another one for Rusty Arnold. Ran a massive race in the victory ride last time out. 101 buyer speed figure. I do wonder if that one has gone over the top. The horse's speed figures were, in the 70s, 80s, and all of a sudden, pop, we hit a 101. That's a big number. That's a real big number. So a little worried about that, whether there's some regression back to the mean for Echo Sound after that huge 101, or whether maybe that just took a little bit out of the horse. Very possible. And you got Mott's horse, Beauty Reigns, one of two Mott horses. That's a 6-1. That's a very live runner in this race. And Irad Ortiz Jr. up, throwing out a 35-2 bullet. Finished second to Echo Sound last time out. Much more consistent, though, in terms of the numbers that this one's been running. 91, 89, 92 the last three times out. Thing is, Junior Alvarado's hopping off that horse. And he's hopping off that horse in favor of Bill Mott's other horse, Ragtime, who is my top selection at 4-1 for a little mom-and-pop operation called Godolphin. And this is a horse that is going without Lasix for the first time. So there is some questions there. Breaking from the inside rail, always challenging. Horse has good but not elite early speed, can pass horses late. I think 7 furlongs is obviously the ideal distance. It's the only distance the horse has ever run was 7 furlongs. In debut, won, stepped up immediately to N1X company, immediately won as your odds-on favorite. This horse has won easily both times. I think it's supremely talented. 96 buyer speed figure more than fits in this spot. 4-1 on the morning line. I like this one a lot. So Ragtime for me is going to be a top choice. As long as Junior can work out that trip from the rail. That's the one thing I'm worried about. But otherwise, man, I think that horse is the goods. And it's also important this horse broke its maiden at Saratoga on the rail at 7 furlongs and did so without breaking on top. Broke mid-pack, still managed to get the job done easily, winning by 3 3/4 lengths. So I just think Ragtime, there's a lot to like. Now, a horse that I like at a little bit of a price is the number 3, Look Forward. This is a nice horse for trainer Mike McCarthy. Humberto Rispoli up, sired by Bolt Doro. Listen, this is a good filly. She won in debut and wins the Santa Ynez and then wins the 8 Bells at Churchill Downs. That's what's so impressive. This is the horse that has shipped all over the country. Del Mar, Losal, Santa Anita, Oaklawn, Keeneland, Churchill, Saratoga. This is the first track where she's actually raced 2 straight races. She's never actually raced at a track twice yet in her career until Saturday, and where she'll run at Saratoga again for the second time. 58-3, 5 furlong bullet work at Del Mar on July 26th. Hello. This horse is cranked up. This horse is getting the cutback from the Acorn, going 1 1/8. We're getting back to what we do best, 7 furlongs, scratch a line through all the 2-turn races. What has this horse done going 1 turn? Just look at that. What has this horse done going 1 turn? Won in debut at Del Mar, won the Santa Ynez at Santa Anita, won the 8 Bells, grade 2 at Churchill Downs. Those are the 3 races this horse has had going 1 turn. The horse is 3 for 3 with 2 stakes wins and a graded stakes win. At 8-1? Sure, I'll take those odds. I know the speed figures are a little lighter than some of the others, but at some point the proof is in the pudding and the results in the pudding. I don't know. That one looks too good to pass up at 8-1. That's for sure. All right. Well, let's go to the Whitney. Let's talk about it. Who's being a chalk-eating weasel? I am. That's who's being a chalk-eating weasel. Fierceness. There's a couple ways to look at this race. You could look at this race, and you could easily say could be too much pace. And I guess before we get to that, we should say there's a 99.9% chance mind frame is scratching from this race. So don't factor mind frame into your equations. That said, Skippy Longstocking is running in the race for Safi. So Safi will have 2 horses. You could easily look at this and go, well, Skippy's got good early speed. Highland Falls has got a little of the speed. Mama's Gold has got a lot of speed. White Abarrio's got some speed. Contrary Thinking's got speed. Fierceness has got speed. Gosh, it's going to be a speed duel up front. Is it going to be a speed duel up front, or are the two longest shots on the board just going to wear each other out? Because that's kind of what it looks like. It kind of looks like Mama's Gold and Contrary Thinking are going to try to run fractions. The thing is, I don't know if anybody's actually going to be interested in chasing them at all. Because Skippy's going to be content to sit a pocket trip third. And because now Skippy's on the rail, and because with mind frame scratching. So Skippy would be on the rail, have no problem sitting a pocket trip third. Highland Falls would likely be sitting maybe fourth or fifth at that point. And then you look at a horse like White Abarrio, probably sitting right around there. And then Fierceness. Fierceness, if he had drawn the 1 or 2 hole, he's a toss. He just is. He doesn't like being around other horses. That's not his game. He drew the number 9 post in a 10-horse field, and the horse to his outside has no early speed in the form of post time. So Fierceness is going to be outside. Nobody's going to be around him. Nobody's going to bother him. He's going to be in the clear the whole way around. It's exactly what he did in the Travers. It's exactly what he did in the Jim Dandy. This is a horse that went up around those nuclear fractions at the Breeders' Cup Classic and still managed to hold on for a second when everybody else faded out of their minds. Comes back from a five-month layoff and breaks the track record of Churchill Downs in the Grade 2 Ali Sheba. Comes back last time out, deals the inside post out of the Wilson chute for the Met Mile over a wet track. We're back on a fast track. We're going 1 mile and an eighth. We have an outside post draw. And Johnny Velasquez is smarter than this. Johnny Velasquez isn't going to let Contrary Thinking and Mama's Gold get him to go faster than he wants to go with Fierceness. Fierceness can rate. Fierceness doesn't need the lead. And I know my colleague Andy Serling said it in a very good video that Kaylee did with Nick Zito and Andy. He goes, he just needs to get his race all the time, Fierceness. If things go wrong, he falls apart. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. The problem is everything sets up beautifully for him here. There's going to be a strong pace, but not an insane pace. And at 1 mile and an eighth, all day for Fierceness. Now, the other elephant in the room is Sierra Leone. And Andy would say, and supporters of Sierra Leone will say, all he needs is an honest pace. That's all he needs is an honest pace. Okay? 2 back in the fairgrounds. He got 110-3 to the 6 furlongs. 47-2, 110-3. Flattened out. The Belmont Stakes at Saratoga, he got 47-1, 110-3. Couldn't close on Dornick and Mindframe. Okay. So much for this idea. Well, all he needs is an honest pace. No, he's gotten honest paces before. He hasn't gotten the job done. No, what he needs is 44-4, 109-2 to the 6 furlong going 1.25 miles. Then he looks like a superstar. But until I see Derma Sotogake entered in these past performances, he ain't getting that pace. He's a tremendous horse. There's nothing fluky about his victory because this is a horse that has never missed the board in 11 career starts. But he's won his debut race. He won the Risen Star over Track Phantom and Catching Freedom over a wet track at Fairgrounds. He got an incredibly hot pace in the Bluegrass at Keeneland, where he beat Just a Touch and Epic Ride. And then he disappointed. Second in the Derby, third in the Belmont, second in the Jim Dandy, third in the Travers. He's run at Saratoga 3 times. He's lost 3 times. He's been the favorite 3 times. He's burned money 3 times. Maybe the 4th time's the charm. Maybe. But a 2-1 with a horse that is trip and distance dependent and pace dependent, I'd rather not take that chance. Now, I think he ran a really good race in the Stephen Foster last time out. I think he did. But it was a shorter field and he was closer to the pace. This is going to be a bigger field. He's going to be more strung out. How many lengths do you want to spot Fierceness? That's the question. And oh, by the way, there's a little horse named White Abarrio in this race too, who won this race 2 years ago and is looking to become the first horse since commentator to do it twice. More than capable. I think White Abarrio is more than capable of winning this race. I'm willing to completely draw a line through that Met Mile. Completely draw a line through it. Because I think that horse just did not like the going that day, didn't like the track surface, never got a handle on it. You look at what this horse has done otherwise. Blew out the field in the Pegasus World Cup. Blew out the field in the Ghost Sapper. And Safi's got this horse in good form. 1.8 miles, I think, is his best distance. He's won over this surface before. I think he's a dangerous horse. And again, I'm willing to draw a line through that sloppy effort last time out because of the track conditions, the Wilson shoe configuration, the distance. A mile is never his distance. So for me, White Abarrio, very interesting horse. Now, in terms of my value play in this race, Highland Falls. That's the horse I think could upset some of this stuff, and maybe you just throw it underneath. I love Highland Falls. I loved him last year in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Why? Florent Drew off, Flavien Prat on. I'll throw money on that angle all day. But in all seriousness, this is a horse that has been, it's just a horse that's had a really interesting career. Because this horse kind of debuted very late as a 3-year-old at Ellis Park, runs in a couple of allowances at Churchill and Fairgrounds, and all of a sudden pops up in the Grade 1 Big Cap at Santa Anita against Newgate, Substanador, and Reincarnate, and runs fourth that day. Then goes to the Oaklawn Handicap, second to Skippy on a day when Skippy was not going to get beat. Then wins the Blame over Cagliostro and Dreamlike. Nice field. Goes and has a horrific trip in the Monmouth Cup against Tapit Trice, though I think Tapit Trice probably would have won that day no matter what. But Florent Drew didn't help matters. Pratt gets up for the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and he just absolutely dismantles Arthur's Ride and Pyrenees and Disarm and that whole group. Doesn't necessarily do well in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Comes back from a lengthy layoff, 7 months, runs a really impressive race going a 1-turn mile at Belmont at Aqueduct in a $100,000 optional claimer, wins by 5.5. And now second off the bench is being spotted in a Grade 1 by Godolphin and Brad Cox. That shows confidence in what this horse has. They don't spot their horses in places like this if they don't think they have a chance. So the fact that Cox and Godolphin are saying, yes, this is our next logical choice is the Whitney, and not targeting the Jockey Club Gold Cup for the second year in a row, I think tells you their level of confidence with this horse. I think Highland Falls is a real problem potentially in this race. If for people who think it might just be the chalk up top, I think Highland Falls might have something to say about that. But for me, I like Fierceness over Sierra Leone. I like Highland Falls at a little bit of a price. Well, listen, even after you're done with the Whitney, there's still 2 more races to go. So let's not go anywhere, folks. We got a $110,000 allowance race going 5.5 furlongs on the turf for 3-year-old fillies and mares. Where am I going to go in this race? Number 12, Leslie's Humor. Horse coming off from a long layoff and was in the Christoph, at the time, the Christoph Clement barn, and was transferred to Chad. Chad's been doing what he does, which is working this horse out steadily for a while. This horse has had 11 workouts leading up to this race, coming off the bench. That's why one of the reasons why Chad wins at such a high rate, 23% over the last year, bringing horses back from a 6+ month layoff. This is a really nice horse who, again, when you isolate the turf efforts, makes a lot of sense. Last time out, some issues, pulled up. Obviously, the horse was healthy. Everything's fine. But Manny Franco up for Chad. Outside post draw. I like that Manny can play the break. This horse has good speed, not great speed. Doesn't need to be in the lead. Can let some of the speed get out in front. Drift over. Save ground behind that. Make a run at the top of the stretch. I think Leslie's Humor at 9-2 presents some nice value in this race. And also, I want to show I don't have any problem against Chad. I just don't like Sierra Leone in that race. But Chad horses, I like picking Chad horses because they tend to run well. And they tend to win a lot. So, it's probably a good trainer to use a lot of the time. In terms of my value play, the number 5, She's Got Will. 10-1 for trainer Mark Casse. This one also coming back from a lengthy layoff. Hasn't run since October 6th of 2024. Coming back in this spot, not getting Lasix. Interesting choice by Casse. Not giving this one Lasix might indicate this one's going to a stakes race next. Maybe he's viewing this as a prep. But still, horse is working out real nicely for Casse. Has had plenty of works getting ready for this one. Sired by War Will. This is a horse that ran 4th in the Miss Griot, was 3rd in the juvenile fillies down at Kentucky Downs, won in debut. Dylan Davis back aboard. Lost to some horses like Mayday Ready, who's a nice horse, and Scythian and Virgin Colada. So I think She's Got Will. Interesting horse. And I really like the cutback, actually, because this horse, I think, is not necessarily 5.5 or a mile and a 16th type of a horse. Maybe it's grown a little bit and matured, but I actually like this one at 5.5, mainly because I think this one has good enough early speed to really make a run, but plenty of foundation. So I'm not worried about this one being able to make the run off the bench, shortening up. But I think an interesting horse here, number 5, She's Got Will at 10-1. Let's go to the very last race on the card, which is a $100,000 main special weight for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares going a mile and a 16th on the turf. And where are we going to go with this one? We're going to go to Chad again because it makes a lot of sense again. Chad and I rad 7-2 Peak Hype. There were 3 horses I looked at as a potential top choice. Peak Hype, Say Yes to Dreams, which is the other Chad horse that used to be with Donica O'Brien, is now making first start in North America since September with Flavian Praddup. That horse might be pretty serious, and it's going to be included in all my late pick 5 tickets. And then the 7, Too Late Baby Doll for Alstall Jr. That's an interesting horse. I'm not entirely convinced that horse is good enough to win this race, but that's an interesting horse. I think the horse just kind of runs the same number again and again. You start, 4 bites at the apple, hasn't gotten the job done, kind of has run basically the same race each time. A little bit concerning there. But ultimately, like I said, Peak Hype is where I landed. This horse was just, it was an educational debut. The horse, as you can see in the notes, was ranked early, didn't necessarily get the best early trip, exerted a lot of early energy, went 2 turns, made a little bit of a run, but ultimately flattened out in the stretch. Second back, I rad stays aboard, better conditioning, better trip all the way around. It's going to be able to save ground on the inside. That's the other thing is you look at where this horse is with some of the others, relative to his stablemate or her stablemate, I should say, and Say Yes to Dreams. Say Yes to Dreams is going to be floated wide the entire way around. So a little bit tougher for that horse to make that run, giving up so much ground all the way around both turns. So Peak Hype, again, 73 buyer speed figure in debut. I rad up. The horse makes plenty of sense. And I think the second time you're just going to get a much better trip than you did in debut. So I like that one, save ground and make it one big run. In terms of a value play, Philip Antonacci's horse Via Veneto with Umberto Rispoli up on the mount. Listen, there's a lot of Paisan in this horse. You got an Antonacci and a Rispoli and a Via Veneto. So listen, how can a guy named DeSantis not pick this horse? In all seriousness, Phil Antonacci should not be discounted. This is a guy who doesn't enter many horses up here, but he wins a lot when he does. Rispoli, always dangerous in turf sprints. Out of a Temple City mare, sired by Malibu Moon. This horse is going to love the turf. I love the 36 flat gate work last time out. This horse is going to show some speed. I love that Philip's been working this horse over the turf. I just think this one might be sitting on a real nice effort at 12-1. That's a big price. The one right next door, Coastal Cabin, also 12-1 for Cherie DeVoe. I took a long look at that one. City of Light, I should say, out of a Warfront mare. That one's, I think, very interesting at 12-1 also. Look at that work 3 back on July 3rd, 47-1 bullet work. This one's sitting on a nice effort. The fact that Cherie's running this one up in Saratoga, not down in Ellis Park or something like that, I think speaks to intentionality. Those two are both interesting horses, the 5 and the 6. I would really consider using both those horses. Maybe in a late pick 5 if you can afford it. If not, at least and throwing in maybe a couple bucks in a daily double, late pick 3 with these. If you can expand out your ticket a little bit more, I think one of those two could pop a big race for sure to close things out. All right, folks. Well, that will do it for this episode of Capping the Card. I hope you enjoyed it. We got through all 13 races, and hopefully we had some fun doing it. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button here on NYRA Bets YouTube today. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, my friends, and reminding you it's now post time.